"Of such is the kingdom of heaven," said the great teacher. Well, if heaven is full of undersized, round-shouldered, hollow-eyed, listless, sleepy little angel children, I want to go to the other place with the bad little boys and girls. In one mill town where I worked, I became acquainted with a mother and her 3 little children, all of whom worked in the mill with me. The father had died of tuberculosis, and the family had run up a debt of $30 for his funeral. Year in and year out, they toiled to pay back to the company the indebtedness. Penny by penny, they wore down the amount. After food and rent were deducted from the scanty wages, nothing remained. They were in thraldom to the mill. I determined to rescue them. I arranged with the station agent of the through train to have his train stop for a second on a certain night. I hired a wagon from a farmer, and bought a can of grease to grease the axles to stop their creaking. In the darkness of night, the little family and I drove to the station. We felt like escaping Negro slaves, and expected any moment that bloodhounds would be on our trail. The children shivered and whimpered. Down the dark tracks came the through train. Its bright eye terrified the children. It slowed down. I lifted the 2 littlest children onto the platform. The mother and the oldest climbed on. Away we sped, away from the everlasting debt, away to a new town where they could start anew without the millstone about their necks. When Pat Dolan was president of the Pittsburgh Miners' Union, and there never was a better president than Pat, he got permission from the general managers of the mines for me to go through the district and solicit subscriptions for The Appeal to Reason. The managers must have thought the paper some kind of religious sheet, and that I was a missionary of some sort. Anyway, during those months, I came into intimate contact with the miners and their families. I went through every mine from Pittsburgh to Brownsville. Mining, at its best, is wretched work, and the life and surroundings of the miner are hard and ugly. His work is down in the black depths of the earth. He works alone in a drift. There can be little friendly companionship as there is in the factory, as there is among men who built bridges and houses, working together in a group. The work is dirty. Coal dust grinds itself into the skin, never to be removed. The miner must stoop as he works. He becomes bent like a gnome in the drift. His work is utterly fatiguing. Muscles and bones ache. His lungs breathe coal dust and the strange, damp air of places that are never filled with sunlight. His house is a poor makeshift, and there is little to encourage him to make it attractive. The company owns the ground it stands on, and the miner feels the precariousness of his hold. Around his house is mud and slush. Great mounds of coulm, black and sullen, surround him. His children are perpetually grimy from play on the coulm mounds. The wife struggles with dirt, with inadequate water supply, with small wages, with overcrowded shacks. The miner's wife, who in the majority of cases worked from childhood in the silk mills, is overburdened with childbearing. She ages young. She knows much illness. Many a time I have been in a home where the poor wife was sick in bed, the children crawling over her, quarreling and playing in the room, often the only warm room in the house. I would tidy up the best I could, hush the little ones, get them ready for school in the morning, those that didn't go to the breakers or to the mills, pack the lunch in a dinner bucket, and bathe the poor wife and brush her hair. I saw the daily heroism of those wives. I got to know the life of the breaker boys. The coal was hoisted to a cupola where it was ground. It then came rattling down in chutes, beside which, ladder-wise, sat little breaker boys whose job it was to pick out the slate from the coal as the black rivers flowed by. Ladders and ladders of little boys sat in the gloom of the breakers, the dust from the coal swirling continuously up in their faces. To see the slate they must bend over their task. Their shoulders were round, their chests narrow. A breaker boss watched the boys. He had a long stick to strike the knuckles of any lad seen neglecting his work. The fingers of the little boys bled on to the coal. Their nails were cut out to the quick. A labor certificate was easy to get. All one had to do was swear to a notary for 25 cents that the child was the required age. The breaker boys were not little Lord Fauntleroys. Small chaps smoked and chewed and swore. They did men's work, and they had men's ways, men's vices, and men's pleasures. They fought and spit tobacco and told stories out on the coombe piles of a Sunday. They joined the Breaker Boys' Union and beat up scabs. They refused to let their little brothers and sisters go to school if the children of scabs went. In many mines I met the trapper boys, little chaps who open the door for the mule when it comes in for the coal, and who close the door after the mule has gone out. Runners and helpers about the mine, lads who will become miners, who will never know anything of this beautiful world, of the great wide sea, of the clean prairies, of the snow-capped mountains in the vast West. Lads born in the coal, reared and buried in the coal. And this one hope, his one protection, the Union. I met a little trapper boy one day. He was so small that his dinner bucket dragged on the ground. "How old are you, lad?" I asked him. 12, he growled as he spat tobacco on the ground. "Say, son," I said, "I'm Mother Jones. You know me, don't you? I know you told the mine foreman you were 12, but what did you tell the Union?" He looked at me with keen, sage eyes. Life had taught him suspicion and caution. "Oh, the Union's different. I'm 10 come Christmas." "Why don't you go to school?" "Gee," he said, though it was really something stronger, "I ain't lost no leg." He looked proudly at his little legs. I knew what he meant. That lads went to school when they were incapacitated by accidents. And you scarcely blamed the children for preferring mills and mines. The schools were wretched, poorly taught, the lessons dull. Through the ceaseless efforts of the unions, through continual agitation, we have done away with the most outstanding evils of child labor in the mines. Pennsylvania has better and better laws. More and more children are going to school. Better schools have come to the mining districts. We have yet a long way to go. 14 years of age is still too young to begin the life of the breaker boy. There is still too little joy and beauty in the miner's life, but one who, like myself, has watched the long, long struggle knows that the end is not yet. End of Chapter 14. Read by Dennis Sayers in Modesto, California for LibriVox. Fall 2006.